today's video, I will be theorizing on how I think Blackbeard survived the God Valley incident and his potential connection to Ohara. This current ongoing flashback has blessed us with so much information and answers to some of the longest ongoing mysteries fans and myself have been wondering for years. Like Rox's face reveal, the fact that he's Blackbeard's father, Dragon being a Marine on God Valley, Shanks' origins, and the list goes on. One of the biggest mysteries I think we're also going to get answered is Blackbeard's beginnings. And what I mean by this are the years following the God Valley incident and the years prior to him joining the Whitebeard pirates. It's 10 unknown years to be specific, and it must be the origin of the Blackbeard we know now. Whatever molded and shaped him into becoming this nefarious pirate with plans of world domination. With that being said, let's begin. Chapter 1160 is the last current chapter we got of baby Blackbeard on God Valley. He was shown on stage with his mother and the other Davy clan members being presented before the cleansing hunt to the Celestial Dragons. Since Blackbeard was an orphan when he joined Whitebeard's crew, that means his mother most likely doesn't survive the God Valley incident, and since we're told Rox dies there as well, this leaves us with questions on how baby Blackbeard survived God Valley and safely escaped the island. Let's start off with Eris, Blackbeard's mother. Many fans were quick to point out that she shares a striking resemblance to Robin's mother Olvia. So what if they're related, possibly even sisters? Now that leads into even more interesting connections. If she is Olvia's older sister, that means Rox may have met her on Ohara. And I absolutely love this idea because this could explain how Rox knows so much. If Rox had access to the library of Ohara, it could explain how he knew his hidden name, Davy Jones, the Galila Giants, and even Emu. And Robin was one of the first, if not the first person in the story to name drop Davy Jones, so the fact that Robin knows some history behind him could be because she learned it on Ohara, which could be the same case for Rox. Blackbeard having a connection to Ohara is even supported by one of Oda's SBS revelations. Someone asks if Blackbeard had to work in the real world, what his job would be. Oda answers that he would have been an archaeologist, meaning archaeology must be connected to Blackbeard within the story, which is something we haven't seen yet. Coupled with the fact that his mother Eris looks like Olvia, who's one of the most famous archaeological characters in the story, I don't think it is a mere coincidence. Now let's dive into some possible scenarios and how I think Blackbeard could have escaped God Valley and where I believe he likely ended up. My first idea is Dragon. Dragon is already hands down one of the biggest MVPs of the God Valley incident. He's currently in the middle of saving Shanks. As we know, Shanks is later found in a treasure chest by the Roger Pirates, so there's a good chance Dragon was the one to put him in the treasure chest. This means something must have happened that prevented Dragon from escaping the island and saving Shanks, which was their mother's dying wish. In chapter 1161, we see that whoever was supposed to watch over Shanks and Shamrock is actively trying to get them back and is working with Saint Maffy to get them. Dragon is attacked by Saint Maffy and loses Shamrock to her. Unbeknownst to her, she thought it was only one child, not two, and didn't even acknowledge the other one she left behind. Since Dragon is wounded, I wonder if he decided to put Shanks in a treasure chest so Shanks might have a chance to survive if something happened to him, or he put him in there for safekeeping while he looked for safe travel off the island. In the meantime, I think Dragon came across baby Blackbeard and his mother. Eris could have been in a similar situation as Shanks' mom. Maybe she was dying and asked Dragon to save her son. How insane would it be if Dragon not only saved Luffy's idol, but also ended up saving Luffy's sworn enemy? The God Valley incident shares quite a few similarities to the Ohara incident, both islands and its citizens being wiped out. If Dragon saved Blackbeard, it would share another parallel, a Marine disobeying orders and saving a child that was marked for death by the world government, like Kuzan saving a young Robin. And where I think this gets even crazier is the place I believe Dragon ended up bringing baby Blackbeard to was Ohara. The contrast of Blackbeard escaping God Valley's destruction only to go to Ohara to survive, while Robin had to escape the destruction of Ohara to survive. And think about it, if Blackbeard's mom was dying just like Shanks' mom, and if Dragon encountered her, she would have told Dragon to save her child. If she's from Ohara, she might even have told him to bring Blackbeard there, because her sister Olvia is there. Ohara is even located in the same sea as God Valley, which would strengthen this idea even more because it would be relatively easy for Dragon to get there instead of having to travel somewhere on the Grand Line. And this supports Rox and Eris meeting because Rox said he was from God Valley, and if Eris is from Ohara, then them being from the same sea would make it easier for them to have somehow met. And think about Rox's early life compared to Luffy's. Normally, before you set out for the Grand Line, you conquer the sea you come from. Luffy did it in the East Blue, so Rox conquering the West Blue before he set out on his journey is very likely. I think this idea also supports how he would have been familiar with and visited Ohara, since it's one of the islands in his home sea. Dragon bringing Blackbeard to Ohara would also reveal to us Dragon's connection to Ohara, because when Ohara was Buster called, Dragon showed up months later to pay his respects, telling Vegapunk that he knew Clover personally, which is a connection Oda has yet to show us. One last thing before we move on is Robin's Devil Fruit power. I always found it odd that she somehow had a Devil Fruit power at such a young age, and Oda has never revealed the story behind her eating it. And contrary to what we've seen in the story, Devil Fruits are still incredibly rare to find and come by, so how did a child like Robin find hers? I think an argument can be made that maybe its previous user was on Ohara and died, and she eventually found the reincarnated fruit and just ate it. Or since the scholars of Ohara studied everything, maybe they found it on their travels or had it on display in the Tree of Knowledge, and Robin just ate it in a similar fashion to Luffy eating his. But what do you guys think about this idea? We know there were Devil Fruit prizes on God Valley, 9 of them to be exact, so what if Robin's fruit was one of them? And if I'm right about Dragon saving Blackbeard and bringing him to Ohara, there might be a chance he brought Robin's Devil Fruit with him. Because remember, Shanks was found in a treasure chest by the Roger Pirates. That treasure chest could literally have been one of the Devil Fruit chests. Where Dragon just switched out the fruit with Shanks, if this fruit wasn't Dragon's, who's highly speculated to have one, maybe it was Robin's and he took it along with him when he went to Ohara. Then gave it to the scholars, and in turn, Robin found it and ate it. My next idea for how Blackbeard escaped God Valley is Kuma. At the end of chapter 1096, Kuma, Iva, and Ginny all escaped God Valley and returned to the Sorbet Kingdom. Kuma is upset that he couldn't have saved more lives on God Valley and begins to pray for the people he didn't save. Iva tells him to knock it off and reminds him that he saved over 500 people. And since we are very familiar with Kuma's Devil Fruit powers, he probably saved them by paw teleporting them off the island. And I know he's technically not teleporting people, but that's just what I'm going to refer to it as. I believe that baby Blackbeard could have been one of these 500 people that Kuma saved. And thinking about it, both Dragon and Kuma don't have to be separate answers. Kuma's power could be how Dragon got baby Blackbeard off God Valley. I doubt Kuma would just paw teleport a baby by itself off the island, but what if Dragon was holding baby Blackbeard and Kuma used his power on them together? And for the plot hole of how Kuma doesn't remember Dragon, God Valley was a chaotic battlefield. Kuma could have been paw teleport spamming people off the island without even having time to speak with them. Also, the next time Kuma even sees Dragon's face is 13 years later in the newspaper. And then when he sees Dragon in person, it's 16 years later. That's a reasonable amount of time to forget someone you barely met. But there's also another problem with Kuma sending Blackbeard to Ohara. Oda tells us in SBS Volume 109 that Kuma can only send people to places he's already been to. At this point in the story, Kuma has only ever been to 2 places, Sorbet Kingdom and the Holy Land. And I know Oda can change this with new revelations, but this is what we know. So when Kuma was saving people from God Valley, the only logical place he would be able to send them would be his home island of Sorbet Kingdom. I feel like the Holy Land is exempt for obvious reasons. But another problem arises from this. God Valley is in the West Blue, while Sorbet Kingdom is in the South Blue, separated by the Red Line. So technically, Kuma wouldn't have been able to send people there because they would crash into the Red Line. This is even supported when Kuma leaves the Revolutionary Army to save Bonnie. He paw teleports himself right next to the Red Line, climbs to the top, and then proceeds to paw teleport himself to Egghead Island. That's why I wonder if Kuma can send people to locations he's never been to, it's just riskier. Maybe if someone were to tell him a general location and the right direction, it's possible. Or maybe if it's relatively close, he can, like Ohara would have been. Even though the Sorbet Kingdom is blocked by the Red Line from God Valley, I bring it up because when Blackbeard joins the Whitebeard Pirates, the island he is on looks like it could be the Sorbet Kingdom because of the building's design. They look like the buildings shown in Kuma's flashback. Now let's explore more into the Ohara and Blackbeard connection. If Blackbeard ended up at Ohara after the God Valley incident, then what led him to leave Ohara, become an orphan, and eventually join the Whitebeard Pirates? If Blackbeard's mom, Iris, was Olvia's older sister, then that means Blackbeard would still have some family left. I think Olvia was the one to take care of baby Blackbeard if he ended up on Ohara. I think Blackbeard would grow up on this island and adopt the archaeology passion like his aunt and possibly his mother. I think this is where Blackbeard would learn a lot of secrets of the world, like the existence of the near extinct races such as Buccaneers, Lunarians, and Three-Eye Tribe. And this could be the place where he found a copy of the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia that he himself said he studied so he could find the exact Devil Fruit he was looking for. And I also think Blackbeard was first made aware of poneglyphs here and their importance. This might be an insane reach, but I think Blackbeard is the reason the scholars of Ohara were able to decipher the poneglyph language and learn how to read them. Now, how is this possible and why do I think this? First, we must ask ourselves, what was Joy Boy's and the Ancient Kingdom's plans in terms of leaving these poneglyphs around if only the Kozuki clan could read them? Why leave a message scattered around the world that 99.9% of the world can't even read if the whole point of these poneglyphs is to spread the truth of what happened during the Void Century? And other than the Kozuki clan, there are two groups of people that are also connected to the poneglyphs. One is the Three-Eye Tribe, that are rumored to have an ability to read the poneglyphs, and there's also the people who have the voice of all things like Roger and Luffy. Having the voice of all things makes it possible to hear the poneglyphs. Roger had the voice of all things and he could hear the poneglyphs. He couldn't read or decipher the words written on them stated by Rayleigh, but he could hear them. I believe Blackbeard has this power as well. Now, it hasn't been confirmed in the story if Blackbeard has the voice of all things ability, but does anyone really doubt this? Luffy has the voice of all things, and Blackbeard and Luffy are two sides of the same coin. Blackbeard is one of the most important characters in the story, has a famous lineage, carries the D initial, and it's very likely him and Luffy may be the final two opponents in the story. I would bet money that Blackbeard has the voice of all things power. And it all makes perfect sense to me. If the scholars of Ohara had someone that could hear the voice of all things, then deciphering the poneglyphs would be so easy for them. Young Blackbeard could hear what a poneglyph is saying, and the scholars can take notes and eventually learn that this symbol means this and that symbol means that, and unlock how to read and decipher the Ancient Kingdom text. And just to remind everyone, the scholars of Ohara were very active in finding poneglyphs throughout the world, and they even had one in their possession during the Ohara incident. And who knows, Blackbeard may have even helped them find that specific one because of the voice of all things power. Roger even shows us he's able to find them quite easily because he can hear them, like the one he found on Skypiea. So this brings up the question as to why Blackbeard kidnapped Pudding if he might be able to read poneglyphs too. I think we can go down two paths here. One where I think Blackbeard can read poneglyphs and he only wanted Pudding because of her devil fruit power, or the second path, Blackbeard never learned how to read the poneglyphs with the scholars and that's why he kidnapped Pudding because of the rumors that the Three-Eye Tribe can read poneglyphs. If we go down path number one, Blackbeard wanted Pudding because of her devil fruit power. We know the Blackbeard pirates are devil fruit hunters and Pudding's power is quite unique. She can look at people's memories and even alter them. Maybe Blackbeard wanted to use this power on someone to learn something or to trick someone. For example, now that he has Garp imprisoned, he could use Pudding's power to examine his memories and really see what happened on God Valley. If we go down path number two of Blackbeard not being able to read them and only wanted Pudding because of her potential ability to read them, well, then you might be asking if Blackbeard helped the scholars decipher the poneglyphs with the voice of all things, then how come he didn't learn how to read them as well? I think the answer to this is quite simple. The scholars of Ohara knew researching forbidden knowledge carried a death sentence. They may have used Blackbeard's voice of all things power to help them unlock the ability to read poneglyphs for themselves, but that was as close as they would let Blackbeard get to it. He wouldn't know what the entire poneglyph message was that he was hearing because it would just be random jumbled up words. You would still need to take that information and cross-reference it with the poneglyph and then start to trial and error a complete translation of what it says. And remember, when the scholars first learned about Robin being able to read poneglyphs, they flipped out because it meant she could be executed just like them. They would never want to put a child in danger like that, so the same idea would apply to young Blackbeard. Now, bringing this back to Pudding and the Three-Eye Tribe, I believe this is where it gets a bit more confusing in terms of what their actual power is, because we're told the Three-Eye Tribe members also have the ability to read the poneglyphs through the voice of all things. But Roger had this power and still needed Odin to decipher and read the poneglyphs. So I wonder if the Three-Eye Tribe has a stronger form of the voice of all things, or just a different power altogether that makes it possible for them to actually read poneglyphs instead of just hearing them like Roger. Because otherwise, Blackbeard kidnapping Pudding makes even less sense if they both have the voice of all things. And again, just being able to hear the poneglyphs doesn't take you that far. You still need to be able to read the text to make some sense of everything. The voice of all things we've seen Roger use just gave him a super vague general understanding or feeling from the poneglyphs. So if Blackbeard kidnapped Pudding for her poneglyph ability, I'm confident in the Three-Eye Tribe's power is more than just the basic voice of all things power we've been shown so far in the story. With Blackbeard's level of forbidden knowledge, I bet he even knows how to forcefully awaken Pudding's power since she said it's still dormant. And this could be our answer as to why the Three-Eye Tribe has been hunted to near extinction like the Lunarians and Buccaneers. If their whole purpose was to keep the poneglyph's message alive throughout the ages by having the ability to read what's written on them, then it would be a top priority for the world government to eliminate all of them. Now onto how Blackbeard chose the life of a pirate and his dream of becoming the king of the world. If you watched my last video, I believe there's a good chance Rox's soul is inhabiting Blackbeard's body, and this could be our explanation as to why Blackbeard set out on this path. If that isn't the case, I think there are other logical options. Olvia or Clover could have told Blackbeard about his parents. Blackbeard could have even learned some of the true history of the world from the poneglyph on Ohara and how his ancestors have continually been enslaved or killed throughout history. These two ideas coupled together could have given Blackbeard all the fuel he needed to enact a plan for revenge against the world government and even the world. Before Blackbeard learned all of this, I think he could have been content with staying on Ohara and living out his life as an archaeologist, but I think some dark revelation changed all of that. He may have even grown disdain for the scholars of Ohara for not doing anything with the knowledge they had. I think this could also foreshadow a very grim choice Blackbeard made, and that was betraying the scholars of Ohara by snitching on them to the world government, and this is what led to the Ohara incident. I realize this point is very much a reach because other things have been shown that led to the scholars' demise, like Clover constantly being captured by the world government and being let go so they could see who Clover associated with, and the other thing being Olvia's expedition team getting attacked and killed by the world government, and they found evidence that connected Olvia's expedition team to Ohara. But Blackbeard informing on Ohara to the world government lines up with his character. He uses people for his own gain, then betrays them once they aren't of use to him anymore. We've seen it with him only joining Whitebeard's crew to have a better chance at finding the devil fruit he wanted, then once it was in his grasp, it resulted in his betrayal of killing a crewmate and eventually Whitebeard. Later he became a warlord of the world government for the sole purpose of gaining access to Impel Down so he could recruit members for his crew, and again, once he got that, he betrayed the world government. I think the same idea could fit with the Ohara incident. Blackbeard could have just used them to learn forbidden knowledge and how to read poneglyphs, and when he had no further use for them, he snitched to the world government because he wanted to erase any competition that could be used against him, like how the scholars of Ohara could read the poneglyphs. If they all get killed, then Blackbeard becomes the only person who can read them, in theory, making him the only person able to get to Laugh-Tale because you need to be able to read the road poneglyphs to pinpoint its location. Unbeknownst and unlucky for Blackbeard, Robin survived and the Kazuki clan can also read them. Blackbeard being the reason for the Ohara incident also fits perfectly timeline-wise. Olvia left Ohara and her daughter over 28 years ago to go on a poneglyph expedition. 28 years ago is also the exact time Blackbeard joined the Whitebeard pirates. I wonder if these two events are connected. If Blackbeard lived on Ohara and wanted to leave, I'd imagine it would be somewhat difficult because he would need a ship and a navigator. If Ohara's only ship was Olvia's expedition ship, that would be Blackbeard's only option, and I could see Blackbeard going about that in a couple of ways. He either snuck onto their ship and then snuck off at the first port they arrived at, or maybe they even took Blackbeard on their expedition. Like I said before, if Blackbeard has the voice of all things, he would be an incredibly valuable asset to them in their search for more poneglyphs. And before I end this video, I have a few more small connections. If Blackbeard has family ties to Ohara, I think Blackbeard's name Teach is very fitting, given that the scholars of Ohara were very big on learning and teaching others everything they discovered. I feel like his name could be a small foreshadow of his lineage. And if Blackbeard has the voice of all things, what if his version of it is so overwhelming and strong that this is the reason he doesn't sleep? Because he is constantly hearing all the things around him that normal people can't 24/7. As always, I would love to know what you guys think. Is there enough evidence here to support Blackbeard having grown up on Ohara, and this is where he formed his plan for the world? Regardless if I'm right or wrong, I'm very excited for what Oda has planned for the rest of Blackbeard's backstory. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you could leave me a like and hit that subscribe button. But that's all for the video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.